All right, before I get started, I thought maybe just do a quick breathing exercise. What do you think? I'm seeing some nods. Okay, good. I know I need one. Okay. So you don't have to close your eyes. You can if you want to soften your gaze, get settled in your seat. Take a deep breath in, hold it, and then let it out slowly. Okay, very good. You can open your eyes. Now think of you're sitting in a chair, obviously. Maybe a few of you are standing. The reason I say this is I want you to notice that. Notice how you're sitting in the seat. Notice how your body is connected to the chair. Notice how your feet possibly are touching the floor. Okay? Notice how the air is touching your fingers, your face. Just notice how you are in space right now. Okay? Perfect. All right. How are we feeling now? Ooh, we have a grate from over here. Allow that to spread throughout the room. Okay, excellent. All right, so my name is Naya Gabriel. I use they, them pronouns. And I, as it says here, I'm an artivist, an artist and an activist. It's a little term that some folks use. I like it, so I use it. And basically, I started painting 3 years ago. Sometimes I sort of leave it like that and let people figure out why I might have started 3 years ago. Ah, very nice. I like that. November 2016. All right, those who didn't get it the first time got it the second time. There you go. Very nice. All right, so I needed a little self-care, if you will, for a variety of reasons. And I am a scientist by training. My day job, I work at Hampshire College as a lab manager in the sciences. I went to Mount Holyoke College, and oh yeah, and so I needed something else. I needed something that took me out of my head, and that I didn't have any preconceived notions about. I have not been trained in the arts, in the creative arts, so to speak. Didn't take any art classes, but I had this a much larger bin than this of craft supplies in the attic. So I pulled it out, and there were a bunch of things in there, crocheting supplies and whatnot, and including paints, acrylic paints, and a couple of canvases. And for some reason, I just started painting. And for whatever reason, that inner critic didn't show up. I don't know why. Whatever. We don't question it. We just say, okay, fair enough. And so it's interesting. All these talks, there's a lot of resonances with my own experience, with my own journey. And I've been noticing that, about identity discovery, for example, and creative resilience, and creating the path as you walk it. Whoa, it's nerve-wracking but beautiful at the same time. That's how I think about it. I literally feel like, I take a step into the great unknown, and then suddenly there's a path for me, ready to keep walking. And that's what it's felt like as I've kept painting, because I do this now for 3 years, and it's become a thing. People respond to it, and I have exhibits and all that. Creative resilience, in fact, is what I call it's a multimodal project. Multimodal because it involves creative engagement opportunities, involves exhibitions, facilitated dialogues about wellness, and also, I suppose, live painting performances. Yeah. So, as far as the live painting, so these are 2 canvas panels They're basically pieces of cardboard with canvas on them. And I try and use recycled materials. These are not, so that's a bad example, but it's just easier for right now. So basically what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take, well, let me explain. First of all, I don't typically mix my colors. I just sort of go with the colors as they come. And I paint intuitively, which basically means I just go with what works for me at the time, what sort of speaks to me. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm just adding, this is brilliant blue, which happens to be my favorite, one of my favorite colors, onto the canvas here real quick. And now sometimes I use brushes. Brushes are pretty standard, right? But most of the time I don't. Most of the time I use various different things. I've used, well, this for example is it's a old health insurance card. I don't know, it seemed appropriate. So right now what I'm just gonna do is just scrape the paint along the canvas. Can everyone see that? Yeah, okay, great. So as you can see, it sort of spreads the paint out, and now I'm sure that I could get better coverage if I spent more time on this, but you get the general idea. And getting full coverage is actually not the idea. The idea is to get a base of color upon which I'm going to add other colors. Okay, so that's one, and I'm very quickly going to do the other one, because there are going to be two. Because this whole process is I hesitate because it's a kind of printmaking, but it's definitely not traditional, as you can tell, because I don't have a press. But it is, because I am going to, and you'll see why in a minute. But now, let's see. Okay, so the one thing that I like to do is I like to experiment. Okay, so this particular technique that I'm going to show you, it came just, because I was playing around with the materials, I was playing around with colors, and this is what I came up with. Okay. Now, all right, we're gonna put that in there. All right, so the next step is basically to start adding colors. So basically, these are the colors that I grabbed this morning. I did not plan it out. That's just, I was like, oh, it's gotta be perfect. And then I was like, but that's not how I work. I just don't. It's going to be wrong. So I just grabbed whatever felt right. So this here is quinacridone magenta, another one of my favorite colors. And so basically I just add the color as it comes out. Is there a reason, a rhyme, or whatever that phrase is? No. Yes and no. I kind of sort of know how it's going to turn out, and I kind of don't. So I work with it and sort of play around. I add the colors kind of randomly, but also not. So basically what's going to happen is we're going to have different forms, shapes. How's everybody doing in terms of being able to see what I'm doing? Yeah? Okay. All right, so I've got two colors on here now. And the one I just added was cadmium yellow medium hue, if you're keeping track. This is cadmium red deep hue. There are so many colors. When I started out, I didn't have, a huge budget for paint and canvases and whatnot. So, that certainly pushed me to use recycled materials and pushed me to keep a very limited palette, which is part of what informed my process, in fact, and has continued to inform my process because it's what works. I also have another limited resource, which is time. So that also creates part of my process is to make things as quick as possible. So that one was dioxazine purple. Now that color entered my repertoire, if you will, very recently, thanks to a new friend, who is here somewhere. Lauren, hi, how you doing? And this one is light green permanent. Okay, and that's gonna be the last one, I believe. I probably forgot something, but you know what? Doesn't matter. Okay, perfect. Actually, no. Forgot the most important, titanium white. Come on now. Hasn't anyone ever seen Bob Ross? Gotta have the titanium white. All right, we're gonna add some globs of titanium white. All right, good. Now I'm done. Okay. All right, so I imagine you can guess what I'm gonna do next, right? Yeah, okay. All right, so this is what it looks like now. All right, now, of course, I could just leave it like this, right? I mean, this is interesting enough in and of itself. I agree. You like how I'm putting words in your mouth? All right. And it would dry much like this. The shapes would flatten out a bit unless I used a thicker paint. But, you know, yeah, it is cool. But what I'm going to do instead, of course, as you are all very intelligent, you can figure out that I'm going to press these two panels together. And I usually have a roller, and that's the semi-press printmaking part of it, but I forgot to bring the roller. So, you know, it is what it is. I'm going to press the two panels together, like so. Now, as I do this part of it, where I sort of squish the paint together, very technical term, yeah. I'll just tell you that one of the reasons why I sort of I like to sort of combine art and wellness, you know, in my practice, is because I use my own lived experiences with invisible disabilities and neurodiversity and other things to sort of bring awareness to all of that, and basically just tell people, look, art, you know, is healing. Art is life-changing. It has been for me. It's life-saving, in fact. And, you know, Audre Lorde has this whole quote basically talking about how wellness, self-care, and not the, you know, putting masks on your face, that, you know, facial masks, that kind of thing, but actual wellness, like actual taking care of oneself. How it's a radical political act, right? And taking care of our communities is a radical political act. That is activism, okay? And so for me, creating art is wellness for me, and for others, because I share it with others, I teach others, and I do make art with others. So art is healing, and it's a key to healing ourselves, it's a key to healing our communities, and it's a key to our liberation, okay? So that's why I do this, and that's why I will continue to do it. And, all right, I think this is ready. Peel these apart. And there they are. All right, so this is the one on the right side, and this is the one on the left side. See? Yeah. And they are slightly different. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And sometimes I will add to, in fact, often what I will do is do two panels like so, and then add to one in a different way than I add to the other, okay? And sometimes, you know, I'll add more paint so that because I don't know if you can tell, but there is some blending that's happened here between the dioxazine purple and the titanium white in this area here. So that's the only color blending that I tend to usually do is the kind that happens directly on the material, the surface that I'm working with. And the kind of surfaces that I use, I use a lot of recycled wood nowadays, because I really love working on wood. And I've worked on actual like just straight up cardboard, from boxes and whatnot. And I've also recycled canvases from other projects or student artwork, that kind of thing. So the opportunities are pretty vast, at least I find them to be. And like I said, I'm trained as a scientist, so experimentation is, it's a thing with me, There's a photo. I suppose I'm supposed to be embarrassed by it, but I'm not. It's a photo of me as a baby, and photos of babies, right? And I'm sitting there with a calculator, and I think I'm like taking it apart, right? And so that is sort of the beginnings of me experimenting and playing. Hand me some materials, and I'll figure out a way to turn it into something else. And so, this is just one technique that I've come up with. Like I have, another one where I mix acrylics with inks, and it creates these interesting cracking patterns on the surface of the canvas, and it's so much fun. And this technique, one of the main reasons I love it so much is this veining pattern that creates. I don't know how well you can see it from there, but these where the texture pops out, and it creates this almost. Sometimes it looks like leaves, And when I added the paint onto the surface, I let it drip sometimes, and I did that on purpose so that it could come out looking like leaves, especially the green. I do that. Anything that sort of mimics nature, natural sort of forms, is just really exciting to me. And so that sort of informs a lot about the way that I'll put paint onto the surface and the techniques that speak to me, the techniques that really excite me. And so I will play with, this past summer, I've discovered that there was this entryway. I was painting in, I was able to use this studio, and the entryway of the studio got really hot because of the way the sun was coming in. And so I would set my paintings there to dry, knowing that they were basically baking in the sun. And that was an intentional part of the process, because it caused certain ways that the paint dried was different from if I hadn't done it that way. And so just different things like that. And again, like I said, I don't have a whole lot of time to do these things. I usually do them on my lunch break, or right before I go home from work, after work, or on the weekends, right? And so the experimentation happens very quickly. It's kind of like, oh, what can I do really quickly, with whatever is at hand. And I really like using, kitchen materials, utensils and things like this that have been sitting around. Not that, are going to be going back to the kitchen, obviously. Just to clarify. But so that's me. Yeah.